Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris LeGros. I'm here this evening to share in this online celebration of poetry created by Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. Since 2003, our family has partnered with the Writers Alliance of Newfoundland and Labrador to offer the biennial E.J. Pratt Poetry Award. E.J. Pratt was our great uncle. We want him to be remembered and recognized for the great poet he became. He was best known for being Canada's unofficial poet laureate, while also being a beloved professor of English literature at Victoria College, which is a part of the University of Toronto. He wrote poetry at a time when poetry wasn't accessible to the general public as it is now. His work captured the essence of the province's struggle to survive during very difficult and challenging times. 2021 marks the 12th awarding of this poetry prize. Because of this investment, this award has advanced the careers of local poets, many of whom have since become nationally recognized. We are pleased to see that the awards are being offered virtually. Congratulations to all the shortlisted poets for your outstanding work. There is no doubt that the judges had a difficult decision to determine this award. We are looking forward to learning who will be the 2021 E.J. Pratt recipient, and we hope to see you all again in 2023.
Welcome to the 25th Annual Newfoundland and Labrador Book Awards. This evening, we'll be hearing from the shortlisted authors for and announcing the recipient of the 2021 E.J. Pratt Poetry Award. My name's Ainsley Hawthorn. I'm Vice President of the Writers Alliance of Newfoundland and Labrador, which administers the awards, and Chair of its Literary Awards Committee. First, I'd like to recognize that Newfoundland is the colonial name of Dahomeyag, the unceded territory of the Beothuk and Mi'kmaq peoples, and that Labrador is the colonial name of Nitassinan, the homeland of the Innu and of Nunatsiavut, and Nunatukavut, the homeland of the Inuit. Storytelling is a fundamental part of Indigenous traditions, and we have an incredible community of Indigenous writers in this place. In fact, 2 of the shortlisted books that we're honoring this evening were written by Indigenous poets and address questions of culture and identity, among other themes. This is the 25th year of the Book Awards, a big milestone. The awards provide professional recognition and financial support for authors writing across a variety of genres. The award winner receives a cash prize of $1,500, and the 2 other finalists receive prizes of $500 each. I'd like to thank our 2021 NLBA Poetry Award sponsor, the Pratt family. They have been very dedicated to supporting this award and advancing the cause of poetry in this province. We appreciate all of their work and dedication to supporting artists in this place. I'd also like to recognize the support of the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador, the City of St. John's, the Telegram, and Perfect Day. Without them, these awards would not be possible. I'd also like to thank this year's poetry jurors, Matthew Hollett, Agnes Walsh, and Josh Goudie. It is not an easy task to choose between so many interesting and worthwhile collections. We really appreciate the effort and the thoughtfulness that you put into reading through all of our submitted works. This evening, our 3 finalists will be reading from their books, and I'll be announcing the winner at the end. Our first shortlisted book is Boom Time by Lindsay Bird, and I'd like to introduce 2021 poetry juror Josh Goudie, who'll tell us more about this collection.
Boom Time by Lindsay Bird. These poems are full of pluck. Wry and vigorous, they are a bold chronicle of the poet's experience as a woman in the construction camps of northern Alberta, with enjoyable diversions elsewhere. Whether describing the injustices and indignities of the workplace or the landscape torn asunder, Bird's writing is always deft, daring, and precise. An impressive and important work of personal testimony, Boom Time puts us right there with the poet as she navigates this surreal, precarious world. It's a focused, well-crafted, and beautifully bound collection of poems.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Bird. I'm really excited to do a reading here. And thank you to the Writers Alliance of Newfoundland and Labrador for putting off the NL Book Awards, recognizing all these amazing books of poetry, and the E.J. Pratt family for sponsoring the Poetry Prize. The long list this year to me looked like a short list. I think that speaks to the strength of the poetry collections connected to this province. Just going to read a few short poems from my book, Boom Time. It came out in 2019 on Gasbro Press. Big shout out to Andrew Steeves and Gary Dunfield and everyone connected to the press who make beautiful books of poetry. My book is all set in and around the work camps of Fort McMurray, just before the recession of 2008, when the turnaround culture and work camps were really at a height out there. And it's loosely based on my own experiences working out there and living in the work camps for a couple of years. So I'm just going to start at the beginning, close to it, and take you through a few poems. This one's called Orientation. 100-ton heavy haulers, their ridiculous wheels, the slack jaw of a 3-story pipe. This is where the last giants lived when the world decided to shrink to reasonable size. And you only find that out after the waivers, left to gawk at the ankles of everything. Smoke fumbles from stack edge to sky end in a 24-hour flutter. On the coldest days, it will separate into nonsense curlicues. This is where all the cursive went when they stopped teaching it in school. This next poem is called After Dinner. 2 hours to kill before bedtime is enough to fill 1,000,000 barrels with bad decisions. Make stupid bets. $5 to drink a cup of piss. $50, $500. The money mostly forgotten as soon as the urine drips down his chin. It tastes like somewhere he hasn't been yet. It's sterile countryside. This next poem is really short, but it might be my favorite in the collection, so I decided to read it, and sometimes short works. Other women are out here, in sweaters plain as prairie grass. We don't know each other's names, faces dim like frosted glass. And while most of the collection is set in Fort McMurray, there are a few poems scattered throughout the collection that delve into memory or situations elsewhere, kind of mimicking those turnarounds where you leave Fort McMurray and the work camps, and you're leading that sort of double life where these things happen elsewhere. And when you're in the work camps, it can feel almost dreamlike, memory-like, that you have this other world outside you that isn't just these really long shifts. So I'm going to read one of those turnaround poems, and it's called Eaton's Etc. Everything 1987 could produce had its own shelf there and was often on sale. Portrait studios, porcelain, perhaps a detective agency on the top story. Toddlers towed past aisles of temptation, only to turn a corner where the wig section waited like a shark attack. If lost, head to bedding and memorize all the shades of aquamarine. My mother's purse clasped and grim as we begged for cassettes, as the display stereos melted U2 into my brother's heart. Such was life before the decline of the empire, when haberdashery was a thing you could reach out and hold. I outlived it all. And I'll just read one more short poem here. Based on a true story, I moved to Newfoundland after I'd written most of this collection and after my Fort McMurray experiences. And while I was up in Fort McMurray, I was screeched in by several guys in our safety department who were all from Newfoundland. And I maintain that is an official certified screech-in, even though it didn't happen on Newfoundland Labrador soil. So this poem is called Newfoundland. Never been, but know most of its men. Kissed a few. A cod, too. Its frozen cheek flown in for a one-night rendezvous. Charmed by cheap rum, quick fiddles, this whole crew. Filling time with fish ceremonies, whatever gets them through, back to their icy coasts, where I'm told it's a better barren view. Of course I will dance with you and you and you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for your reading. Our next finalist is Inquiries by Michelle Porter, and I'd like to introduce 2021 poetry juror Matthew Hollett to give us the jury's thoughts on Inquiries.
Inquiries by Michelle Porter. There's such warmth and imagination in these insightful poems about family, home, and memory. The long Mama's Kitchens poem cycle was particularly wonderful, a gutsy cross-section of one family's history. Poems like March 14th, 2014 are a loving, visceral tribute to the struggles and spaces of the poet's childhood. Porter brings the inanimate objects of the kitchen to life with such emotion, and the book has a raw honesty that really engages the reader. The collection as a whole is infused with a sense of optimism that belies the sometimes dark subject matter. Overall, we thought this was a very strong collection, especially for a first book.
Hello, my name is Michelle Porter. I'm a poet, fiction writer, and nonfiction writer here, of course, in Newfoundland, Labrador. And I'm so honored to be on the shortlist for the E.J. Pratt Poetry Award. And so the book of poetry that I've been shortlisted for is my first book of poetry, Inquiries. The first poem I'll read is Packing Boxes and Loading the Truck. I will not carry your grief on my hip, will not wet this husk of guilt because the time has come to leave. I will be your homecoming, here, there. I will not bury my uterus in this silted river to keep you from the future. You will miss the land you once belonged to when you learn to crack the sun's marrow and listen for gristle in the stories. The land of your birth will settle, become your spine. Leave the remains of these lives for the ones who will rush in when we turn our backs. Child, loss must sharpen your reflexes. Your souls will callous, and the earth will corroborate your leaving. Where the songs root and grow. When the stories won't stop telling themselves, she walks from the old plank-floored house out the front door to the bush where the songs root and grow, to her circle of trees. And there she pulls dead branches to mark the make-believe kitchen she never really leaves. A branch for a broom and earth between the roots. Home, this gathering of trees, this sound silence makes from the rustle of living things. A little girl sweeping the soft earth with a bony branch. Home, 2017, Kings Road. No curtain in the kitchen, even after 2 years. Never know when she might be moving on. But she gets a craving for every bit of light that comes through those windows. Can't get enough. Lord knows there's not a spare drop of sun, not a scrap to waste. Not here. The next poem is one, when I'm doing poetry readings or visiting a class, it's one that I often use to introduce myself. I'm a Métis, I'm a descendant of Métis family and live here in Newfoundland, Labrador, but I'm a Western Red River Métis woman. And this poem takes place in Manitoba. The South Saskatchewan, July 2018. Night will stalk the trail to this valley, and I will go down to the river behind the house I do not belong to. The teenagers in the water will splash like children and laugh like men, come from the reserve up the way, or maybe they will be Métis, come here for patoche, like me. On my face, I wear provisional pink skin and white mineral sunblock. The avalanche of sun burned my hair blonde. I will watch the shining children pile into their cars and drive away. I will squat and offer both hands to the rush of the river so I can share her tributaries and be introduced to her fish. I will tell her my story. My great-grandfather did not swim here. He shed his scales and passed over this earth for what he could buy in British Columbia with money from selling a paper script promise, 5 acres for himself and 5 for each daughter. The South Saskatchewan River will welcome me. and I will take off my shoes. I will say, my great-grandfather dragged trees from the forest that he owned by legal contract and sold the logs to feed his family. This was the price he agreed to pay for the fiddling and the jigging he could not leave by the Red River. When the woman in the house up the road stands, her head is in the sky. She has invited me in. I want to say I am someone's granddaughter, a white-skinned Métis grown in the city. My mother's stories were the milk that kept me from hunger on days we didn't eat. Her stories fed my bones so they became hollow and light. The woman in the white house wrote histories I recognized and hid away for the days of empty cupboards. I will take nothing from the river because my grandfather never spawned here. I will walk past the white house I do not belong to, and I will get into my car. Daylight will pack up, and evening will arrive, and the South Saskatchewan will watch my back as I drive away. Her stare will ache in my joints. That's my reading for today. Thank you very much, and good luck to everybody on the list. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for your reading. Our third finalist is Crow Gulch by Douglas Walbourne-Gough. 2021 poetry juror Josh Goudie will now give us an introduction to Crow Gulch.
Crow Gulch by Douglas Walbourne-Gough. This book feels significant, not only for its chronicle of the shameful tragedy of Crow Gulch, but for the poet's forthright investigations into class and prejudice, privilege and masculinity. The poems about hiking and outdoorsmanship beautifully complement the poet's more inward struggles with family and belonging. These themes intertwine perfectly in poems like Growth, where the collection is at its best. The depth of research and personal excavation in this book is really impressive. We love that the book is about Corner Brook, part of the island that is underrepresented in our provincial literature. This well-honed book of poems is especially impressive as a debut collection.
Hello, my name is Douglas Walbourne-Gough. I am the author of Crow Gulch. I'm absolutely thrilled to be nominated for the 2021 Newfoundland and Labrador Book Awards. And to that end, I really want to reach out and thank the Writers Alliance of Newfoundland and Labrador, as well as the Pratt family for sponsoring the E.J. Pratt Poetry Award. So I'd just like to take a moment to read 2 poems to you. Let's see. The first one is titled Breaking Ground. This is a poem I came up with just by meditating on what it is to live in a place that is so absolutely gorgeous, but also such an imposing physical, geological landscape, and what that brings out in the people who chose to and still choose to live here. Breaking ground. What if the land you want to break is bedrock? Bald fields of stone, flowered with boulders, kissed by bog and moss, less than knee-deep. What if this land is so stubborn, so resistant to charms, that spruce grow sideways, grow themselves into knots for spite? What then is your next move? How do you woo a stony place whose blood's gone salt and spends half its year in snow? A land so unfriendly that its dark and angry ocean borders hold far more life at twice the risk of death, yet you sail between continents to get there, just to dock and take breaks between boatloads of some other country's fish? Well, you buck up. You defy law and logic, squat in tickles and coves, learn their rhythms, make do along the edges. You learn to take salt blood as lover, as old god of giveth and taketh away. Bend like Tuckamore, lean against the wind. Love it like a mother and let it shape you. You keep going because refusing to accept it means accepting death. Life here was that simple. Over generations, you grow a bit lower, closer to earth like cloudberries, like Labrador tea, like crowberries and lichen. Become stocky like black bears. Cling to this rock as stubbornly as it tries starving you out. Tries drowning your loved ones. Tries blowing you off a cliff. Back across the Atlantic like a skipped stone. And I'll just read one other. Okay, this one is titled My Father and I Fishing. It comes from the years that I grew up in a canoe. We did a lot of trouting growing up for subsistence, mainly from canoe, and it became not only a way to navigate ponds and harvest trout. I realized that it became a place where I learned so much about far more than fishing. And I kept thinking about my father on the other side of the canoe facing me, and then behind him, his parents, and then how beyond me, there could be future generations that maybe I can pass on to. So I thought of that plane as something temporal. And then I thought about the sky, and then also on the surface of the water, the very surface itself and the tension involved with being our canoe just barely breaking that surface, but then also the depth of the water below. So it became this kind of a dual axle sort of a thing. It begins with a little quote from John Berger. Home was the center of the world because it was the place where a vertical line crossed with a horizontal one. Our old canoe nudges the pond's silver skin. Paddles pull through cloud-spackled sky as we set hooks in the mouths of brook trout. Breaching fish become bullseyes. Our hand-tied flies flicked forward. Then that flash of fin and splash. Rod buckled half-moon in reward. I read this surface like scripture. Recognize time's slow fold in the drift of rivers. My grandfather's face in the fleeting wake of paddle strokes, but depth eludes me. I vie for this seat with my mother, usually end up hoofing the shore, smiling quietly while she outfishes my father, her glee peeling across the water like bursts of light. It makes me ache for my grandmother's company. I wish I'd shared this boat with her, watched her bird bone frame form laughter mixed with the cry of diving loons. I sit across from him, my coltish potential fumbling to keep up. From this canoe, he's seen himself in the sky, geese flying through his mind like seasons. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Douglas, for your reading. It now gives me great pleasure to announce the recipient of the 2021 E.J. Pratt Poetry Award, Douglas Walbourne-Gough for Crow Gulch. Congratulations on your achievement, Douglas, and congratulations as well to our two other finalists. Excellent set of poetry collections this year. I'd like to thank our jurors for their hard work and our sponsors, especially the Pratt family, for their ongoing support, as well as the Government of Newfoundland and Labrador, the City of St. John's, the Telegram, and Perfect Day. The Nonfiction Award readings, as I mentioned, took place last night. You can watch the recording anytime on the Writers Alliance Facebook page. Congratulations to 2021 Nonfiction Award winner Andrea Proctor for A Long Journey. The 2022 Newfoundland and Labrador Book Awards will honor excellence in the categories of fiction and children's young adult literature. The NLCU Fresh Fish Emerging Writers Award will also be given in 2022, so please keep your eye out on WANL's social media and our mailing list for the submissions periods for those upcoming awards. Thank you everyone for watching, and if you want to learn more about the Writers Alliance, programs and services, you can visit our website www.wanl.ca.